Chapter 1: Louisiana, the New Territory. Only 20 years after it became independent, the United States suddenly and owing to a tremendous stroke of luck doubled in size. 50 years later, the young country stretched across immense plains and towering mountain ranges to touch the Pacific Ocean. How it grew so fast in such a short time is still an amazing tale. Thomas Jefferson, 1743 to 1826, was the third president of the United States. By far the largest growth spurt of the United States occurred in 1803, when President Thomas Jefferson's bold decision doubled the country's size. The Louisiana Purchase, the new territory acquired by the U.S., reached from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains, a total of about 828,000 square miles, or 2,144,354 square kilometers of land. The Louisiana Territory had been largely unexplored until after its purchase by the United States. At the start of the 19th century, the United States had only 17 states in the large Northwest Territory, which surrounded the Great Lakes. There were 5.5 million Americans, mostly living along the eastern seaboard. However, more than 700,000 settlers moved west of the Appalachian Mountains after the American Revolution ended in 1783. They pressed into regions that later became Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi. These people, who by 1803 outnumbered Native Americans by 8-1, were farmers, fur traders, hunters, and adventurers. Many of them used the Mississippi River and the vital port of New Orleans to send their products to the Atlantic coast and to Europe. Below the lower Mississippi and New Orleans remained in foreign hands. Originally claimed in the name of King Louis XIV by French explorers in 1682, Louisiana had been under Spanish control since 1763. Winning the American Revolution had given the United States the Northwest Territory, while Britain retained Canada and continued to claim Oregon country. However, Spain still controlled Florida, the Southwest, and all of the land from Texas to the Pacific Ocean. King Louis XIV, 1638 to 1715. The Proclamation of 1763 declared that the colonies could not build west of the Appalachian Mountains, which changed after the American Revolution. Although Spain had been an American ally in the Revolution, Spain was determined to keep Americans out of its territory. In particular, the sparsely populated lands west of the Mississippi River made an excellent buffer zone between Spain's rich silver mines in Mexico and the restless Americans who always seemed to want more land. Americans living near the frontier often felt neglected by their government. Some politicians in remote areas began encouraging groups of people to secede from the United States and become a part of Spain. Congress now had to decide whether to encourage or discourage Western settlement, and in 1787 it passed the Northwest Ordinance. This act said that settlers could elect a territorial government when 5,000 males, not including slaves, lived in a district, and with 60,000 people, they could apply for statehood. Thomas Jefferson suggested many names for new states, such as Metropotamia, Pellissippi, and Sylvania. The Declaration of Independence was outlined by Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin, and written by Jefferson. The men that fought for the United States were called patriots. The American Revolution. After the wars with France, England was left with a growing empire and a huge debt, so the King of England raised taxes in the American colonies. Colonists protested the new taxes and began to form militia groups. The American Revolution War began in 1775, and on July 4, 1776, the Second Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence. The British surrendered in 1781, and the Treaty of Paris, signed on September 3, 1783, granted the 13 colonies independence. Before the Civil War, New Orleans had the largest population of free blacks in the South. At trade schools like this one, free blacks could learn useful skills to make a living. Throughout its colonial history, New Orleans and the surrounding land had been unique. It had a large African population, mostly from one region in West Africa. Many black individuals were not slaves, but free tradesmen. By 1795, about half of New Orleans' carpenters, joiners, shoemakers, silversmiths, gunsmiths, and seamstresses were free blacks. Native Americans also made up a large segment of the population throughout the 18th century, and they shared food, medicines, and other trade goods with colonists, teaching them Native American building methods and games. After the Revolution, New Orleans became a regional trade center with many shops and market stalls throughout the city. Because both France and Spain had colonies in the West Indies and sent spices, tobacco, sugar, and slaves to America through New Orleans, that city had a mix of people, cultures, and languages unlike any other place in the country. The Cajuns. Louisiana has long been the home of Cajuns, descendants of French-speaking immigrants who were forced to leave Nova Scotia, Canada, in the mid-1700s. The word Cajun comes from Acadian or people of Acadia, an early name of Nova Scotia. The British forced them into boats, and they wandered for years, eventually finding themselves welcomed by the Spanish authorities of Louisiana. Today, about 85,000 Americans consider themselves Cajuns, and 45,000 of them live in Louisiana. They are especially known for Cajun cooking, music, and dance. Cajun food tends to be made with seafood that incorporates blends of spices to make healthy, delicious meals. In 1763, Louis XIV's successor, Louis XV, had given New Orleans and the surrounding mass of land to his cousin Carlos III of Spain. Always suspicious of large numbers of newcomers moving into its territory, Spain closed New Orleans and the lower Mississippi to foreigners in 1784. But 11 years later, concerned that the powerful Great Britain might try to seize Louisiana, Spain signed Pinckney's Treaty with the United States, assuring Americans of the right to navigate the lower Mississippi and establishing New Orleans as a duty-free port. Meanwhile, the French Revolution, which began in 1789, had produced a powerful general, Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon eventually became Emperor of France and conquered territory all over Europe. Americans suspected that Napoleon also had ambitions in the New World. Louisiana Purchase, 1803. Napoleon Bonaparte, 1769 to 1821. Louisiana then and now. Louisiana was the name of the huge territory that President Jefferson bought. Its vast wilderness reached from the Gulf of Mexico to Canada and from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. Today, that territory makes up 15 different states: Arkansas, Colorado, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Texas, and Wyoming. The portion of the Louisiana Territory that makes up today's Louisiana was called the Territory of Orleans. The boot-shaped territory was admitted as a state in 1812 and renamed Louisiana, State of Louisiana.